Xerfi Global has recently published a report on automotive suppliers, who mainly depend on two growth drivers: car production volume on the one hand, and on the other, the value of the content outsourced to them. Although it is true that the future of the automotive market remains uncertain, overall figures over recent years have been positive on both fronts. Vehicle production has grown by an average annual rate of 3.2% worldwide in the last 10 years to reach over 91 million vehicle units in 2015. In terms of how much of a car's added value is outsourced to suppliers, the figures have also been positive. The proportion of value added provided by automobile suppliers has shot up, going from 69% in 2005 to around 78% in 2010 and then to 82% in 2015. This is the result of the fact that car makers have long been putting considerable pressure on car part suppliers to take on additional tasks, responsibility and risk in terms of research, design and manufacturing, pulling them up the supply chain. It is therefore increasingly common for suppliers to invest more heavily in research and development than car makers themselves, putting innovation, technology, engineering and thus bargaining power into their hands. For example, while car makers Hyundai and Toyota spent just 2.4% and 3.7% respectively of revenues on research and development in 2014, suppliers Valeo and Denso spent 8.9% and 9.2% respectively over the same period. Car makers are therefore assuming more of a role as assemblers and less as manufacturers, and have a huge dependence on the expertise of their suppliers. Indeed, this balance of power is also reflected in the profit margins of car part suppliers compared to car makers. Suppliers' profit margins have outperformed those of their customers, car makers, over the last 5 years. Car makers are facing pressure to invest heavily so as to meet stricter environmental and safety requirements as well as customer expectations, such as increased connectivity, and have difficulty passing these extra costs on to end customers given the highly competitive environment. The challenge for car part suppliers is thus to ensure car makers do not succeed in putting too much pressure on suppliers' margins to boost their own profits. The relationship between car part suppliers and car makers is indeed symbiotic, and suppliers are highly influenced by car makers' strategies. As car makers have begun to increasingly use standardization and modular platforms, suppliers have reshuffled their portfolios and often increased scale, growing to mega supplier levels to be able to supply large-scale component projects. As car makers have expanded or relocated abroad, they have encouraged suppliers to follow them. When car makers seek innovation, suppliers must ensure they do not fall behind, particularly in highly strategic areas such as connectivity, safety, or self-driving. And finally, when car makers come to cut costs, suppliers must follow suit or risk lower margins. Such aims explain major recent moves in the business, such as ZF Friedrichshafen's acquisition of TRW, creating the second largest car part maker, allowing ZF Friedrichshafen to gain scale and also strengthen its position in strategic innovation, such as self-driving technology. Delphi has also made a series of acquisitions to allow it to keep ahead of the game in terms of innovation in the electronics and connectivity market. Mergers and acquisitions are expected to increase over coming years, driven by needs to access technology, markets, a wider customer base, but also so as to focus on higher margin business while shedding less profitable activities.